Look at them, they're beautiful.
They really are.
Come on out, girls, the sun's setting.
An old farm sat abandoned at the edge of town for years. Windows broken. Fields dead. Locals said it was cursed, and no one dared to go near it. Then one day, a couple made an offer that shocked everyone. $1. People laughed. They said it was a waste of time, that nothing good could come from that place. But the couple saw something others didn't. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe it was something deeper calling them forward. When they finally unlocked the gate and stepped inside, the air felt different. Heavy. Still. Like the place had been waiting for them. The door creaked open, and what they found inside made them stop in their tracks. Because this wasn't just an abandoned farm. It was hiding something no one in the town was ever meant to see. The road to the old farm was long and quiet, cutting through empty fields and fading trees. By the time the couple arrived, the town behind them already felt distant, like something they had left in another life. Ahead of them stood the property. It was worse than the pictures. The fence was broken in several places, leaning as if it had lost the will to stand straight. Tall grass had taken over most of the land, and the barn in the distance looked tired, its roof uneven and its wood darkened by years of weather. The house sat at the center of it all. Still upright, but barely. No one in town had wanted it. Not for years. The price had dropped so low it stopped making sense. Finally, it reached a number that made people laugh when they heard it. $1. Even the clerk at the office had joked about it, saying it was less a sale and more a burden being passed along. But the couple did not laugh. They stood at the gate for a long moment, taking in everything in silence. The woman adjusted her bag on her shoulder. The man looked down at the papers in his hand, then back at the land. People don't sell places like this for $1 unless there's a reason, she said quietly. The man folded the papers. Maybe the reason is just that no one wanted it anymore. She gave him a look that said she did not fully believe that. The gate was rusted and stiff when he pushed it open. It gave a long, sharp sound as it moved, breaking the stillness of the place. They stepped inside. The air felt different immediately. Heavier. Like the land was holding on to something it did not want to release. They walked slowly toward the house. Every step pressed into dry earth that cracked slightly under their weight. The silence around them was complete, except for the faint sound of wind moving through the broken fence behind them. The house grew larger as they approached, its front porch sagging slightly in the middle. One of the windows was cracked, the glass reflecting the pale afternoon light in uneven lines. The woman stopped a few steps away. "It feels like no one has been here in a long time," she said. The man nodded. "Or like someone left and never came back." Neither of them moved for a moment. Then the man took a breath and stepped onto the porch. The wood creaked under his weight. And for the first time since arriving, it felt like the farm had noticed them. The front door gave way slowly when the man pushed it open. It resisted at first, as if it had been closed for too long, then finally moved with a low sound that echoed into the house. They stepped inside together. The air was still and heavy. Dust floated in the light coming through the broken windows, drifting like it had been waiting there for years without interruption. Every sound they made felt louder than it should have been. The living room was mostly empty. A few pieces of old furniture remained under thin, faded covers. A table stood near the center of the room, slightly tilted on one leg. The walls were plain, but the marks of time were clear on them. The woman moved slowly, looking around. "It does not feel destroyed," she said. "It feels left behind." The man nodded and pulled the cover off a chair. The wood was solid underneath, not broken, just forgotten. They moved deeper into the house. Each room was similar. A kitchen with empty cabinets. A bedroom with a bed frame still in place. A hallway that led further into silence. But nothing felt random. It was as if everything had been placed carefully before the people left. At the end of the hallway, the man noticed a door that stood out from the rest. It was heavier, made of stronger wood, and had a lock that looked more recent than anything else in the house. The woman stepped closer. "That door does not match the rest of the house." The man tried the handle. It did not move. They both stood there for a moment, listening to the quiet behind it. The house had nothing left in sight. But that door suggested otherwise. The man stepped back from the door and studied it for a moment. It was not old like the rest of the house. The wood looked stronger, and the lock had been replaced more than once. The woman looked around the hallway as if expecting someone to appear. "This part does not feel like the rest of the place," she said. He nodded and went back toward the entrance. In the barn outside, he found an old set of tools left behind. A hammer, a screwdriver, and a small crowbar. All worn, but still usable. When he returned, the woman was still standing near the door. "You really think we should open it?" she asked. "We came this far," he replied. He worked carefully on the lock. Each movement made small sounds that seemed too loud in the quiet house. After several minutes, the screws loosened. The lock finally gave way. The door opened slowly. A cold draft moved through the hallway. They stepped inside. The room was different from anything they had seen so far. It was not empty or neglected. It was organized. Shelves lined the walls, and boxes were placed neatly in rows. Everything looked like it had been maintained at some point. The woman walked to the nearest shelf and opened a box. Inside were papers, carefully stacked. The man found another box. Inside were old photographs. Families standing in front of the farm. Fields full of crops. Life that looked distant but real. But in several of the photos, there were figures standing slightly apart. Not smiling. Just watching. The woman looked at one photo longer than the rest. "This does not feel like normal storage," she said quietly. The man did not answer. And for the first time, the house felt less empty than before. The couple placed the boxes on a wooden table in the center of the room. Dust rose slightly as they set them down, but the papers inside were surprisingly well kept. Someone had taken care to preserve them. The man opened a stack of documents first. They were old land records, but many of them had notes written in the margins. Dates, names, and references that did not match anything official. The woman found something else. A thin notebook with a worn cover. She opened it slowly and began to read. The writing inside was uneven, as if written in a hurry at times and carefully at others. It spoke of people coming to the farm at night. Of meetings that were never recorded. Of changes made without explanation. She read a line aloud. "They believe no one watches this place anymore. That is their mistake." The room felt quieter after that. The man leaned over another set of papers. These were more recent than the rest. Some were official reports, but they were incomplete. Pages were missing. Signatures looked inconsistent. "This is not just old history," he said. "Someone was still involved here after it was abandoned." The woman closed the notebook. "Then why leave everything behind?" Before he could answer, a faint sound came from outside the room. A soft movement, like wood shifting somewhere deeper in the house. They both froze. The man looked toward the door. "We are not alone here." The woman nodded slowly. The house that had felt empty when they arrived now felt different. It no longer seemed abandoned. It felt occupied by something they had not yet seen. The sound came again, closer this time, faint but clear enough to make them both turn toward the hallway. It was not loud. Just a small shift, like something moving under pressure. The man picked up the crowbar without speaking. The woman stayed close behind him as they stepped out of the room. The hallway felt different now. The air seemed tighter, as if the house itself was holding its breath. They moved slowly, listening with every step. The sound led them toward the barn outside. When they reached it, the doors were still slightly open from before. A thin line of fading light cut across the floor inside. They entered carefully. At first, the barn looked unchanged. Old wood, empty space, and silence. But as they moved deeper, the man noticed something near the center of the floor. A section of the boards did not match the rest. The wood was newer, placed more carefully, as if it had been repaired or hidden. He knelt down and pressed against it. It shifted. The woman stepped back slightly. "That was not there when we looked before," she said. He used the crowbar and lifted one of the boards. Beneath it was a dark space, sealed off from view. A staircase. It led downward. Neither of them spoke for a moment. The man looked at her. "We need to see what this is." She nodded, though her expression showed hesitation. He stepped forward first, lowering one foot onto the first step. The wood creaked under his weight. Below them, the darkness waited. Whatever the farm had been hiding was no longer just in the past. It was still here. The couple stood at the edge of the hidden stairs, staring into the dark space below. Nothing moved. No sound came up from inside. Only silence, heavy and steady, like the place had been waiting for a long time. They had come to buy a forgotten farm for $1. But what they found was not forgotten at all. It was hidden. And whatever was down there was still part of the story that had never ended. The man tightened his grip on the railing. The woman took a slow breath. Together, they began to step forward into the darkness, not knowing what would meet them below, but unable to turn back now. Some doors, once opened, do not close the same way again. And some places remember more than people expect. Now tell me, if you were in their place, would you go down those stairs? Or would you walk away while you still could? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, like, share, and subscribe for more mysterious and emotional stories like this one.